Hi boys and girls, and welcome to today's math lesson. This is topic 14, lesson 9 on page 589. That is 589. We are working in our Envisions workbook, volume 2, and again, this is topic 14, lesson 9 on page 589. Let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to begin with our solve and share, just like we do every single lesson. So you should be seeing something similar as on your page as you see on the screen. So it says draw an X on all the objects that have flat surfaces that are circles. So that they have flat surfaces that are circles. Tell how you know the objects are circles. Then circle the words that are true about the objects you crossed out. So that gave us a lot of information, so let's break it back down. So let's begin with what it first says. First says to draw an X on all of the objects that have flat surfaces that are circles. So this is really important how they worded it. They did not say just to cross out and put an X on circle objects. It's objects that have flat surfaces that are circles as well. So you are going to do this with me. So make sure you have your pencil ready. I'm going to get my computer pen. So I'm going to be looking for flat surfaces that are circles. So let me start up here. I have this flower plate. This flower plate, is it a circle? Yes, it is. So I'm going to draw an X through this flower plate. And I want you to be doing the same. Okay, let's go up here. I have a cooler. It looks like a cube, but does not have a flat surface that is a circle. Okay, what about this glue stick? Let's look at it. Oh, I do see. You can see it looks like a long cylinder, and cylinders have two flat surfaces that are circles on them. So I can see that this becomes a circle, and as well as the white part down here. So think of when you look at a glue stick. When you open a glue stick, is the glue part in a circle? Yes, it is. So we are going to put an X over the glue stick. So remember, we're putting an X on any objects that have flat surfaces that are circles. Alright, what about this clock? I have this clock here. Is this a flat surface? That is a circle? Yes, it is. So we are going to put an X through that as well. Let's go back down to the bottom row. Let's look at our cone down here. This is an ice cream cone, kind of like the example Mrs. Collier gave last time. So we have an ice cream cone here. So it is a cone. Here's a point at the top, but let's look at the bottom of it. We can see here, there is a circle on the bottom of our cone. This is a flat surface that is a circle. So we are indeed going to put an X through the ice cream cone. Okay, what about this rectangular prism? This rectangular prism, does it have any flat surfaces that are circles on it? No, so we are going to leave him alone. Let's go to our button over here. A cute little button. Is this a flat surface that's a circle? Yes, it is. So what are we going to do? Put an X through it. Good job. Last one, we have a soup can. A soup can. So the shape of the can is a cylinder. And we just got done talking about cylinders when we looked at our glue stick up here. So a cylinder is a shape that has two flat surfaces that are circles on it. So when I look at the top of my soup can and the bottom shape of my soup can, is that a flat surface that is a circle? Yes. So I'm going to cross that out. So I crossed out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 objects that had the flat surfaces of a circle on it. So you should have crossed out all of those items with me as well. So now we have to make a statement. It's saying these objects, and it wants us to circle the statements that are true about all of these objects. So we talked about that as well, all statements. It's not just the ones we're working with, talking about all the statements. So it wants us to pick. It says the objects are white, are small, have 0 edges, have 0 vertices, have faces, have flat surfaces. So let's think, out of all of these objects that we drew an X through, what statements would be true? Well, let's look at them. All objects are white. Well, I can look at some of my objects and see they are not white, so we're not going to pick that. These objects are small. Well, we can't say that because some of our objects are small, but some of them are decently big. What about the objects have 0 edges? Would you agree? I would agree. These objects have 0 edges. Let me redo that. Sorry, everybody. It's a little harder. It's a broken finger. So, these objects have 0 edges. We'll say that. Because we were talking about the flat surfaces that are circles, and circles or spheres do not have edges. What about they have 0 vertices? We can't say that because our object right here, our cone, has a vertice, so that's not true for all of the objects. What about have faces? All of these objects have faces. No, we're not going to say that. What about have flat surfaces? Well, what we went through and did was mark all of the objects that had a flat surface that was a circle. So I know I have to circle this down here. So your workbook page should have these 2 circled and all of those X'd out, just like we did together. Alright, on the next page of our workbook page, so that is page 590, we are going to watch this short video to help us continue our lesson.
All of these shapes are triangles. Circle the words that are true of all triangles. How can you make sense of the problem? What do you know? You know that all the shapes are triangles. What do you need to find out? You need to find out which of the sentences are true about all triangles. How can you use what you know to solve the problem? The shapes are all triangles, so you can check whether each sentence is true about each of the shapes. Let's make a plan for solving the problem. Circle the words that are true of all triangles. Look at the first sentence. All triangles have 3 sides. Is this true? Do all triangles have 3 sides?
Select your answer.
Do all triangles have 3 sides, yes or no? What do we think? Do all of these triangles and all triangles always have 3 sides? Yes.
Yes, all triangles have 3 sides. Circle that phrase and continue for the rest. Are all triangles blue? No, they are not. How do you know? Two of these shapes are triangles, and they are not blue. Do all triangles have a flat bottom? No, these triangles do not have a flat bottom. Are all triangles big? No, triangles can be any size. Do all triangles have 3 vertices? Yes, all triangles have 3 vertices. How can you check your answer? You can check your answer by reading the sentences again to see whether they match the shapes and what you know. Are the sentences you circled true for all triangles? Yes, all triangles have 3 sides and 3 vertices. You have circled the correct words. Great job!
Alright, so on that same workbook page, so page 590, 590, we have the convince me part of our workbook page. It does say show me on my screen, but this says convince me on your workbook page. It says, what words can always be used to describe a rectangular prism? So what words can always be used to describe a rectangular prism? Well, let's think about a rectangular prism and all of the things we know about them. We learned a lot about them yesterday in yesterday's lesson. So a rectangular prism. I know a rectangular prism is a 3-dimensional or 3D shape, but what are some characteristics about it? Can you name anything about a rectangular prism that can be always used to describe it? Let's think about how many sides and faces a rectangular prism has. How many vertices does a rectangular prism have? Or how many edges? So in this section, boys and girls, you can write any answer choice that you want that describes how a rectangular prism can always be described. So we just talked about vertices and edges and sides and faces. So let's pick one. And if you don't want to pick the same one that I picked, you can write your own. But let's think. I'm going to think about vertices. So a rectangular prism, if you remember, has 8 vertices. So I'm going to write, and I'm sorry, boys and girls, Mrs. Collier's finger is really hurting today, so I'm having to rest it. So I'm using my other hand. So I'm just going to write has, oh, that's an S, 8 vertices. And if you want to write something else that describes a rectangular prism, that is okay. I'm sorry, this is not great handwriting. Again, I'm writing with my left hand because I know you all know Mrs. Collier's right hand finger is broken. So when it's in a little cast, it's really hard to write with the mouse. So I'm going to write has 8 vertices for this section. On the same workbook page, so still page 590, it now wants us to complete the guided practice together. The guided practice says circle the words that are true of the shapes. So let's look at all of our shapes. Number 1 says all of the shapes are squares. So all 4 shapes that we see on the page are squares. Now we have to select the words that are true. and it wants us to circle the statements that are true. So let's read it. It says all squares, first statement says, are orange. All squares are small. All squares have 4 equal sides. And all squares have 4 vertices. So it wants us to circle which ones are true about our statements about squares. So let's read them one more time. So it says all squares are orange. Well, let's look at all of our squares in this picture. Are all of these squares orange? No, some of these squares are blue and some are green. So that is not a true statement because it's saying all squares. Remember how important this word all is. What about all squares are small? Well, let's look at our pictures of our squares. I really only see one small square, and these ones are pretty big. So this is not a true statement saying all squares are small. This statement, all squares have 4 equal sides. We know when we see a square, it's a square because that is one of its defining characteristics that has 4 equal sides. This test answer choice was already circled for us, so we are just going to go ahead and circle it because that is a true statement. And our last one, all squares have 4 vertices. Is this true or not? Remember, a vertex is the corner point on a shape, so it's these points down here. So do all squares have 4 vertices? Look at our squares. Do they all have 4 points on them? Yes. So we are going to circle this statement as well. Good job. Our next workbook page, which is just on the other side, is 591. So that's 591. This is independent practice, so as always, you will be answering these questions by yourself, but Mrs. Collier is going to help you read and understand the question. So let's look at the directions for independent practice. It says, circle the words that are true of the shapes, then explain how you know. So this is just what we've been doing so far in our lesson, except now it wants you to explain. So let's look at number 2. Our statement says all of these shapes are cones. All of these shapes are cones. And then it has a picture of 4 cones. So now let's read the statement. It says all cones are blue. All cones have 1 flat surface. All cones have 1 edge. And all cones have 1 vertex. So it wants you to circle the words that are true of all of those silicones. And then it wants you to explain, how do you know that these statements are true for all cones? It wants you to do the same thing for number 3. In number 3, it says all of these shapes are hexagons. Then our statements say all hexagons are small. All hexagons have 6 sides. All hexagons are blue. And all hexagons have 6 vertices. So it wants you to circle the correct answer choices for all hexagons, not just a few, but all 5 of those hexagons at the bottom. All right, boys and girls, now this is the last page of our workbook. It is page 592, that is 592, and we are answering numbers 4 and 5. So let's read what it wants us to do in problem solving. It says, Wes has cubes, spheres, cylinders, and cones. He wants to use these shapes to make art pieces for the arts and crafts sale at school. Wes wants to put together the right shapes for each piece of art. So let's read number 4. Number 4 says, Wes wants to put together one shape that has 6 faces and one shape that has no flat surfaces. So Wes wants to put together one shape that has 6 surfaces and one shape that has no flat surfaces. All right, so to solve number 4, you need to look at the shapes shown on the page. So the sphere, the cube, the cone, the cylinder, you need to look at those. And you need to find which of those shapes has 6 faces and which shape has no flat surfaces. And write in the answer response what shapes he used. On number 5, it says Wes puts 2 cubes together to make a new shape. Tell what shape Wes made and one thing that is true about the new shape. All right, boys and girls, so in number 5, if Wes takes 2 of those blue cubes and either stacks them together or puts them side by side, it now becomes a new shape. So if you were to put 2 cubes together, what shape does that make? And what is one thing that is true about that new shape? So first you would have to put the 2 cubes together and then get your new shape. And tell me what that shape looks like and one thing that is true about it.